Hey, I'm Jay, and you're listening to the More Than podcast. I'm a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, confidence coach, and red carpet host. Don't let those titles fool you, though. I'm a 30-year-old, overly curious woman who loves to connect with others over the good, the bad, and the hilarious parts of our stories. From the outside looking in, my 20s looked really glamorous, but in reality, I struggled deeply with my confidence, self-worth, and mental health. I went on a deep healing journey to figure out how to live a life that felt as fulfilling as it looked, and now I help you do that too. I'm not afraid to go deep, and our guests aren't either. We talk all about mindset, mental health, confidence, relationships, beauty, boundaries, business, fashion, while giving you tangible tools for your own growth. This is one of those girl chats that leave you feeling inspired and empower you to stop settling and create a life you love. You're so much more than whatever's holding you back, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited for today's episode because I get to introduce you guys to my brand new, wonderful assistant, Priscilla. Hi. You guys are going to fall in love with her. I fell in love with her so quickly. We've only known each other for 2 months, and it was like love at first sight.
It literally was. Literally. For both of us.
And now we're together 24/7 and doing amazing work on here. And so she's been pushing me outside of my comfort zone to be more active on social media, to open up a whole lot more. So the other day she's like, okay, it's time. We're doing a Q&A. Like, nobody cares. There's not going to be any questions. There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions.
A lot. So we're going to do a little tell-all today, and it's going to be really exciting and fun. And you didn't tell me all the questions beforehand, which is rude.
A pageant tell-all.
A pageant tell-all. Yes. We love those. We'll take it away, girlfriend.
I'm so excited. So first things first, how did you get involved in the pageant world?
Oh gosh. So the pageant director for Miss Arizona USA came into my sorority chapter meeting. So we used to have these meetings once a week. I'd only been in the sorority for a hot second, and she came in and talked all about the pageant. I rolled my eyes because in my mind, I wasn't a stereotypical pageant girl, whatever that looks like. I still don't know what that looks like, but in my mind, I'm like, no, I don't do pageants. And luckily, a sorority sister shouted my name out. She wrote my name down. And with enough peer pressure, I finally said yes. And I'm so glad I did because it changed my life.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't even imagine that feeling of like, I mean, how many other women were in the room with you?
Oh gosh, in the sorority alone, like hundreds.
That's crazy.
And I had rushed my sophomore year of college instead of my freshman. So I was super new into this whole atmosphere. And honestly, I just wanted them to like me. So even though I didn't really want to do the pageant, I'm like, well, you said I should, so I'm going to. Yes, ma'am. And I had 5 sorority sisters in total that all said yes. So we all did it together.
Wow. How did you feel when someone shouted out your name?
Shocked, but really excited because I felt seen. That's such a good question. I haven't thought about it from that perspective in a while because I've always been one of those people that has a very close knit circle, that I have like 1 or 2 really good friends. And outside of that, I'm acquaintances with people, I'm friendly with people, but I've struggled connecting with people on a deeper level because I'm such a deep person that when I ask you how you are, I'm like, really, no, how are you? Like, let's have an in-depth conversation. Most of the people that you're around, especially in college, it's like, you're drinking, you're partying, you're talking with guys, like things are just really superficial. And I really struggled in that environment. And I just didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel seen. And so having somebody that we weren't even good friends, having her be like, you'd be perfect for it, was enough confidence that I'm like, okay, if she thinks I can do it, like, sure, why not? And so thank God she did. But honestly, if somebody else hadn't nominated me, I don't know that I would have done it.
Wow. That's
actually, I do know that I would not have done it. I do know that.
So you went to compete in Miss Arizona, and what was that experience like?
Crazy. So when I decided that I wanted to do it, I looked at it more than anything as like a business opportunity because it's expensive to get into pageantry. Not only do you have an expensive entry fee, I think mine was $2,000, but then you have to buy a gown, which gowns are so expensive.
Oh my gosh. Like, how expensive?
Like, if you're doing a real pageant gown, thousands of dollars.
Oh my gosh.
It's like prom dresses on steroids. So it's like you see some girls that will get like a $500 dress, and then there's others, like my Miss USA gown, I think if I would have bought it, luckily it was gifted by a sponsor, I think my gown was like $6,000-$7,000. Like,
it's like a wedding dress.
Exactly. They're expensive gowns. And there's a lot of girls, which I didn't know at the time, obviously, but there's a lot of girls that keep competing year after year after year and always have a different gown. They view pageantry as a sport, and it is a sport. But I obviously didn't view it as a sport, and I couldn't afford the entry fee. I couldn't afford to buy a gown. And so I looked at it like, this is a business opportunity to get everything sponsored. So I did that. Like, literally every part of me that you see was sponsored. My nails, my tan, my makeup, my extensions. And that part for me was so fun, because then I felt like I had all of these brands on board to support me. So when I showed up to pageant weekend, I felt like I was representing more than just me.
Yeah, that's so smart on your part. And were on any of the other girls, were they doing that?
No, which was confusing to me. And I remember my director, after I won, giving me a lot of praise for that alone, because I was looking at it as a business opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're, one, scrappy, and if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, it's very much like, how do I go into this experience and have it benefit me in every way possible? That I knew it was one day. And if I showed up on that one day, and honestly, I never even thought I would win, like, that never crossed my mind, but it was like, I'm not going to put all this effort in for one day. I'm going to enjoy the process. Mm-hmm. So I only had 3 months before the competition. Most people prepare for a very long time before. And for those 3 months, it was more like, how do I get other people excited about it and want to support me and want to show up for me? And that made me more excited, because I'm somebody that I'll show up for others every single time. Yeah. But if it was just a personal goal for me, and if I never talked about it, I don't know that I would have showed up in the same way, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. How are you feeling the night before the Miss Arizona?
Before going into pageant weekend? Yeah. I vividly remember the night before. I remember sitting on my mom's couch, and I was eating an apple and was like, guys, I'm so hungry. Like, let's make some actual food, because it was the weekend of Thanksgiving. And so my poor family was the most supportive, most wonderful. And by family, I mean mom. Like, my mom was like, we are all committing to this, and we are all going to show up the best that we can for her. So we're not making Thanksgiving meal this year. We are making fish. At the time, I was eating white fish, asparagus, and rice cakes, because I went back to my fitness competitor diet. Yeah. And our Thanksgiving, that's what we had. And my sister still won't let me live it down, because Thanksgiving is her favorite holiday. And she's like, screw you, man. Like, I'm eating fish on Thanksgiving. And there was so many like weird dynamics going on within our family at the time. And like, I remember leaving that meal and like eating an apple later that night and being like, I can't wait for this to be done so that I can eat a real meal. Yeah. Like, I was almost like over it at that point, but also still so giddy and so excited. And when I went into pageant weekend, everything was so new and so exciting that it's like, I had zero expectations. It was, I got my schedule, I got my room, and it's like, what do we do next? Like, this is what we're doing all weekend long. Like, this is so much fun. Yeah. And I think because I had such a lighthearted attitude about it, it made me stand out, because I made friends with all the other girls. Like, I wasn't viewing others as competition. Instead, it was like a fun girls' weekend away. And then once I got crowned, obviously, the friends that I had made there, like, were all so excited. But you notice things shift too, because everyone handles competition differently.
I was going to say, what were the vibe of the other girls like during the weekend?
A mixture of things. That there was a lot of other girls that had the same attitude that I did, that it was just fun and everyone was excited getting to know each other. But there was a handful of seasoned competitors that, like, this is what they do. And they've prepared a long time for this. You have this newbie coming in that doesn't know what's going on, has no strategy. And like, girls will take lessons on walking so that you can walk differently than you do in your swimsuit versus your gown, on posing, on interview style. There's a lot of money that people invest into it ahead of time. So I think other people took it more seriously than I did. And I can understand why that would be annoying to have somebody come in that, even though I took myself seriously to an extent, I was just there to have fun. And a lot of these other girls were not there to just have fun. They were there for one goal, and that was to win. And so there's definitely some like cattiness that came out. People handle that stuff very differently.
Give me a granular, like, what happened? I want to know all the drama.
Thank God my mom is the woman that she is, and she's just a little smarty pants that she's like, hey, let's just put all your stuff in Ziploc bags before you go. Like your
she's so smart.
Swimsuit, your everything. Like you never know if something spills or like if something tears, like just be safe about it. I'm like, that's weird. Like, no, I'll just throw everything in my bag. Like it's all good. Well, thankfully, she got me these like waterproof Ziploc bags where she put my final swimsuit in, which was also a sponsored swimsuit from this like designer brand. It was wonderful.
It was also white.
That my white one was Miss USA.
Oh, okay.
Thank God.
I'm getting mixed up.
That one would have been. Oh, anybody that does a white swimsuit on stage is high. I don't know why they ever decided to do that. But my state one was blue. And it's in this little Ziploc bag. I think I was out at lunch, and then you come back and you get yourself together and do your own hair and makeup. I reach in my bag and it's soaking wet. And I realize that all of my little like energy drinks that I had are open and upside down in my bag. And I'm like, I know I did not do this.
Do you know who did it?
I do. She probably will never listen to this, but she was in the top 5 with me.
Oh my gosh.
And she competed many years after and many years before. And that's how she chose to handle competition.
How'd you find out that it was her?
Somebody was in the room and saw her do it. Because I'm like, guys, this is weird. Like, there's no way I would have done that. And how do you like make that accident?
Yeah.
And somebody came up to me and they were like, I saw her do it.
Whoa.
I'm like, well, thankfully it was in a handy dandy little waterproof Ziploc.
Yeah.
So
thanks,
it didn't
Mom.
get stained. It didn't nothing. But I saw another girl, actually my best friend that was competing, somebody else spilled something on her dress. That like dresses were in a totally separate area. So like to get stuff on somebody's dress, you had to go out of your way to do that. And that happened to her. I know it happened to a couple other girls too. Like there's a lot of like sabotage-y stuff that happens that is just like, I don't go there. I don't get it. And also that's not going to make anybody else have like a leg up. I don't know.
Well, my mind goes to if they actually, like, what would have happened if it did get all over your swimsuit, or if it did get all over, like, would you have just worn it anyway and just gone out?
Probably.
Like, yeah.
Knowing me, probably.
Has that ever happened before where someone's had to like go out and, I don't know, that's crazy.
That's a good question. If any of you are listening that did happen to you or that you know of somebody, please write in and tell us because that's interesting. I don't know that anybody has been like sabotaged and still gone out.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
I think that's the idea that like you scramble and have to do something else last minute.
Yeah.
But again, a waste of time in my mind.
That's crazy.
Focus on yourself. Stay in your own lane.
Oh, totally. So then you're crowned. And what was that feeling like?
Confusing. And so awesome, but so confusing. And like, it's so embarrassing to watch my crowning video, but it's so pure.
So pure.
And now that I look back at it, I'm like, oh, she genuinely didn't know what was going on. And I think that's so precious because all I wanted was top 10. And then when I got into top 5, I was really excited for that. But that was like the oh shit moment. I have to do an onstage question. You don't have to talk in front of everybody.
What was your question?
I had 2 questions, but my first question was something along the lines of Adriana Lima had just had a baby and she was caught photoshopping an image on her social media. And it was something along the lines of if I agree with that, if I think it's okay for women to Photoshop their stuff. That was a question. And then some other lighthearted question. And I remember saying like, fork 'em. Because I was at ASU and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Why did I just say that? But it's like, my mind just went blank and I just spoke like I normally speak. And before I knew it, it's like one after another is getting called and I'm standing holding hands with one other girl. And I don't even remember how they phrased it, if they said the first runner up or if they said my name. I don't know. Whatever I decided to do, I stood back and literally like pushed her forward and like go to clap and then watch a girl come up to me and start taking off my sash. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And then I had known the Miss Arizona USA beforehand. We worked together and she turns around and smiles at me with the crown. And that's when it hit me that I'm like, oh my God, they're crowning me. I just won. Like, and I'm slumped over with my shoulders, like just so happy. My crown's lopsided falling off. Like, it's just so pure joy. It was pure joy. And I had so many girls after just flood me, hug on me, love on me. And it was just nothing but excitement. And my whole family came up on stage after too. Aww. And they were just as shocked as I was. They were like, what is going on? I'm like, surprise. Like,
I'm sure your sisters were grateful that they ate fish for Thanksgiving that year.
She's still pissed. She's still so salty.
So how did your sorority sisters respond to you winning?
That's a good question. Not well at all,
geez.
Which surprised me because I thought that the response and the reaction would be very celebratory because one of us was taking it home for a whole house of women.
You took one for the team.
That's what I thought. And I remember I got crowned on a Sunday and our chapter meeting was on a Monday. And I had press that morning. I had a TV interview, I had a photo shoot, all this exciting stuff. And my number one priority was that I could make it back to that chapter meeting. And so I walk into the chapter meeting with my crown and my sash on. I don't know what I was expecting, like hoping it was like going to be a celebratory thing for all of us. I've never been in such an uncomfortable position in my life. It was crickets. I think one person hugged me. And I've never seen so much judgment before. And then when I went to go sit down, I could hear women behind me talking shit about me.
What were they saying?
About why would they choose her? She never should have won. And now when I look back at it too, there was some older sorority members that had competed that didn't place. So I think that from like a friend perspective, it's like, she should have won. Like, why is this chick? You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. Just say that behind closed doors, not when I can hear you. But I remember it getting to a point where I could hear so much of it. I got up, I left the chapter meeting, and it used to be in like an auditorium at our college. And I went into the bathroom and I cried. And I left the chapter meeting and I never went to another one.
Wow.
And I also didn't hear from any of them afterwards.
It's just so crazy to me because it's like, I know you. And I just am like, why wouldn't it be Jordan? Like, I have the opposite reaction of like, duh. Like, who else would they pick?
That's
like,
so nice of you.
Anyway, that's my biased take on it.
And I'd had there was one that I competed with that was my best friend. And she was wonderful and continued to be wonderful throughout the entire process and stayed in the sorority. But I decided to actually leave college for that year. And I wanted to focus 100% on this reign. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And to be fully transparent and honest, I'm not somebody who ever should have gone to college in the first place. I only did it because neither of my parents graduated from college. And it was so important to them that I went. And it just never fit for me. And so I had this opportunity to not do that. And I'm like, peace. Like, was so glad to be out of that atmosphere. And with the pageant, I actually won a full ride scholarship to another school in Arizona.
Wow.
So I went back to school, and not many people know this, but I went to Grand Canyon University for my junior and my senior year, and I graduated from GCU, not ASU.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh, I didn't even know that.
I know. Everybody thinks I graduated ASU, and I don't correct you if that's what you think. But nope, I was a LOPE, and I went to a private Christian university in Glendale, Arizona. And I did online classes mixed with a handful of in-person classes while I worked a corporate job.
Wow. So you win Miss Arizona.
Yes.
And then you go on to compete in Miss USA.
Yes.
What was the hardest thing prepping for Miss USA?
The hardest thing, if you asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said the physical challenges, because I was training every day for many hours in the day, and I had just come off of competing in a fitness competition where I had lost 60 pounds. I had seen myself in a very particular light, and started going through metabolic damage. And it got really bad 3 months before Miss USA. And so I was manipulating my body as much as I could to get back to that place. And so all I thought about was my body. Morning, afternoon, and night. Like that was the number one focus for me. And now when I look back at it, it was the mental game. Because it was never really about my body. Like your body changes. You go through metabolic damage. But if I would have had my head on right, and if I went in with the right mindset, I would have done so much better and had a better outcome if I would have taken charge of the whole mental game. But I was too fixated on my vanity, which given that's what you do in pageantry, like that you're being judged for the way that you look. Let's be honest, that's what it is. But when I look back at it, I'm like, that was the hardest part for me. Wow. Is the mental warfare that I was going through.
Was there anyone in your circle, because it obviously takes a lot of support to be able to go through, you know, competing in Miss USA. Was there anyone in your circle that you, in hindsight, wish you hadn't had in your circle?
Yes.
Who is that?
I got connected early on with somebody who did not have my best interest in mind at all. And I had never been in a position like this, and neither had my family. Like, we had never been a part of a pageant world or the modeling world, and I wanted to do as well as I possibly could. And from a family perspective too, like my mom and my sister, they wanted to equip me and surround me with people that just knew better. They knew what to do. And at the time, I should have just listened to my director and my actual sponsors that were helping me in that position to move forward. But there was one particular woman that grabbed on early in my pageant journey, and I thought that she had all the answers on if I did everything that she told me to do, that I would be successful, and that not only would I win Miss USA, but I would be a professional model at the end of it. I would have all this notoriety. I would have all of these things. And so there was just a lot of manipulation there. And I think I was too trusting. And unfortunately, this person is the first time in my life that I ever realized that not everybody can be trusted. And I was really jaded for a really long time because of that. And I've still I've tried to come to terms with the fact that at the time I saw her in a different light than who she actually was. And once I did finally see what I needed to see, man, I cut that off real quick, but it was ugly. Oh, and my reputation was dragged through the mud quite a bit because of it. And I lost out on a lot of opportunities because of it, a lot of money because of it. But now I look back at it too, and it's like, I learned a lot from that person in particular. And she's since apologized and we're fine, but just, you can't trust everybody.
It's a tough lesson to learn.
It's a tough lesson to learn.
Especially being so young and going through this new career that, you know, you're so hopeful about.
Totally. Oh and I had opened up, I mean, my life, my home, like she was living with me at one point. And then for all of that to just feel like it was just a slap in the face.
Yeah.
The whole bit of it. But I learned.
Yeah.
I learned real quick and made some different decisions because of it. But I also was surrounded by a lot of people that didn't care about me as an individual. And that's the hardest truth in pageantry. It's a business. And their business is you as you're a title holder. They don't care what you do afterwards. I'm sure a lot of them want you to do well and want you to go on and succeed, whatever that looks like for you. But you're no longer their focus. Yeah. And when you go from the entire world being revolved around you for a year to nobody caring at all, it's a mind trip.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Was there anything that happened during prepping for Miss USA that no one knows about?
Yeah, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast or not, but my parents actually split up the week of Miss Arizona USA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It had just happened. It was fresh. And obviously when you're an older kid watching your parents go through something like that, you're just more aware. You understand things on a different level, and you're also viewing your parents as human beings that are hurting, that are going through a transition, and nobody knows the right thing to do. Nobody knows the right thing to say. And instead of us being able to like properly deal with that and have a transition, it's like, well, now I'm Miss Arizona USA, and you have all these family appearances and there's all this stuff that you all do together. And I applaud them for putting their stuff aside for me, because I know that had to be really hard. Like, that's a difficult thing to do, to put your own crap aside and try and show up as a picture perfect family when there's stuff going on. But they did the best that they could. And I'm thankful that I have the family that I have, especially during that season of time. But I never felt like I actually dealt with it, or like dealt with the trauma of that. It is a trauma. Your family getting broken up.
Absolutely.
It's a trauma.
It's almost worse too when you're older.
I think it is.
Like,
you're so much more aware.
So much more aware. And then there's that stress and that pressure on you of, you know, you don't want to see your parents hurting, and you want to take care of them. But then at the same time, that hurts. I mean, your inner child is hurting too.
Absolutely. It's such a trauma for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And there's no manual on how you deal with something like that.
Literally no manual.
You know, and everybody has their own individual feelings, and everybody, like, different things set off different people. And I had the world revolve around me for a year. And I was not nearly as present as I should have been, nor was I as understanding to other people's emotions as I should have been. It was just kind of like, you go deal with your stuff, because I'm doing this, and this is all happy, and you're making me sad, so go away. That's not a good way to handle it. But I was also a child.
You were also so young. And
exactly. Also a child.
It out. Yeah.
So it's, you know, I think when adversity and stuff like that happens, behind the scenes especially, like, you have a choice on how you decide to handle it. And I feel like I say this all the time, but it's something that I feel like everybody needs to hear, is that unresolved trauma manifests itself in a lot of weird ways. That I didn't finally deal with it or come to terms with even a trauma like that, that then snowballed into all these other things, until I was in my mid-20s and realized I've never dealt with this stuff, and there's actual pain there that needs to be addressed. And once I did that, I feel like I healed every bit of my heart that needed healing. And I just wish that people would take the time to do that, because it will save you a lot of toxic patterns. It'll save you a lot of toxic relationships, because we look for validity in other people that we're missing from ourselves, you know? So if you start addressing some of that stuff early on, you can save yourself a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, lesson learned.
Was there anyone famous that you met while you were competing?
Oh my gosh. I met a lot of famous people throughout that year, which was real fun. But actually at Miss USA, I got pulled aside by Donald Trump.
Shut up.
So he owned the pageant at the time.
Oh
and
my gosh.
I don't mean to come across any type of way when I say this, but I feel like my year of pageantry was the last, like, incredible non-drama filled year of pageantry, because Trump owned it, but it was really well run, and Paula Shugart was still in charge, and they had it just down. Like, it was a live telecast. They had a team of support surrounding them. Like, it felt like such a professional organization. And I remember for prelims, Trump and his whole little gang walk in, and I was like, oh my God, this is real weird. Because all I had known about him was that he was on that show Apprentice, where he said, like, you're fired. So we're all laughing about that behind that. I'm like, that's the only thing I know about this guy. And then finals happen, and some random person taps me on the shoulder and is like, Miss, can you come with me? And I go behind stage, and he's just standing in a corner with the mayor. And he shook my hand and said that I caught his eye during prelims. He mentioned that I remind him of his daughter, and that regardless of the outcome, I'm going to have a lot of success.
Wow.
And it wasn't flirtatious, even though it was kind of a weird way to say that, but like, it felt very much like somebody had recognized something within me. And I don't know if he knew, like, you ain't winning this thing, girl, but like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was a boost that I needed.
Wow.
That I did feel honored in a weird kind of way.
Yeah.
That it was
totally.
like, okay, you're a successful business person,
Yeah.
aside from anything else, and you've never talked with me, you don't know anything about me, but to recognize that, it was like, it's kind of cool. And then obviously everything has happened over the last 10 years that I'm like, well, I'm going to take the win that I got.
Yeah.
And he was nice to me.
But moments like that, I feel like the universe just works in mysterious ways.
Oh
and
my
you
gosh,
never
yeah.
know, you never know when, I don't know. I just think that that's so crazy.
It was pretty cool.
Wow. Oh
it
my
was
gosh.
pretty crazy, but
That was not the direction that I thought that was going to go either.
Right? It's a moment that sticks with me so many times, and it's still like, I'm thankful I had the experience that I had.
Yeah.
And that it was positive. And everybody, whenever I'm like, I met Donald Trump, it's like, oh God.
No.
And I'm like, I mean, he told me I reminded him of his daughter.
He's a good guy.
He was nice to me. I don't know. But
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's many other crazy stories. I didn't actually like work with him. But yeah, that was probably the craziest celebrity that I met during that weekend. Oh, and then Lance Bass was one of my judges, and we flew home on the plane together, and he was so nice.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved him.
Oh my
He was
gosh.
great.
Did you date anyone famous, or did you date anyone at all during your reign?
I had been in a very long-term relationship with somebody throughout high school and then college, and we had actually broken up right before I decided to compete. And we had one of those like off again, on again situations, and a wonderful, amazing person, just like two completely different paths. And so I was like interested in going into the dating world, but there was a lot of weirdos in the dating world that I'm like, this is kind of a scary place. And there was this one guy that I met at a club in New York City who was a really well-known sportscaster and perfect gentleman, so nice to me. And we talked for a while, and ultimately he was a lot older than I was. And I'm like, no, that's weird. And then the only other person, I slid in one person's DMs in my whole life. And it's because my mom made me do it because she was determined that I needed to marry this man. It was JJ Watt.
Stop it. That's so
after
funny.
Miss USA, and he never opened it. And thank God he didn't, because I ended up, JJ Watt, you ghosted me. Even though we were in a relationship, even though you didn't know it. And that was the only time that I ever shot my shot with anybody. And thank God it obviously didn't go anywhere, because I met my husband like a month after I gave up my title.
Wow.
But other than that, just a lot of creepy old men.
I'm sure.
Creepy old men love pageant girls.
Yeah. Any favorite memories or appearances that come to mind when you think back on your reign and then during Miss USA?
I did a lot of public speaking at the time to young girls, especially, about the importance of confidence and believing in yourself. And those appearances stick out to me the most. And there was one young girl that was battling a really rare disease, and her mom had worked out at the same gym that I did and told me about her, and she looked up to pageantry so much. And I remember she was going through a blood transfusion at the hospital, and the mom had told me about this, and I asked if I could come and visit her. And so I came into the hospital in my sash and crown to go see her, and I will never forget the look on her face when I walked in. And her and I formed a very special bond. We still talk now. And that memory, and when I realized the power of that crown and that sash and how it can impact especially a little girl, it changed everything for me.
Wow.
And so I tried every opportunity that I got that I could speak especially to young girls and make a positive impact on them. That's what fueled me for the whole year, and it still does. I mean, I haven't put my crown on my head in 8 years, but our next door neighbor has an adorable 8-year-old little girl, and Brendan had told her that I was a princess and that I had a crown at home, and came in and I showed her my crown and one of my old pageant photos that I have a crown on, and she asked if I could sign it. So I signed it for her, and every single time she comes over, she's holding that picture. And her dad had told me that it is right next to her when she goes to sleep, and always calls me Princess Jordan. And it's stuff like that I'm like, that is so special.
That's so
and
sweet.
So cool. Like for that alone, I will always be so grateful for that chapter. There's a lot of beauty that came out of it.
Oh, totally. Would you let your daughter compete?
Depends how old she is.
Mm-hmm.
As a young girl, like toddlers and tiara stuff.
I was just about to ask.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Have you watched that show?
I've seen it and it bothers me.
Yeah.
And like, no shade to if you want to do that with your child, but I do think that we already are raised in such a toxic environment with such unrealistic beauty standards as it is. And pageantry, although it is a sport, you are judged based on your appearance. To do that to young girls really instills a message that somebody else's opinion of you is what should be held at the highest. And I don't think I would let my child compete until she had a strong enough sense of self-worth. That if she was 19 or 20, and if I raised her right, that she learned the lessons that I know now at that time, and she genuinely wanted to do it, yeah, I would support that. Prior to her knowing who she is, hell no.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Do you have any advice for those that are or have or are going to compete in state?
I have so much advice, but I think my number one piece of advice for them is figure out your why. Why are you competing in the first place? Because if it's just to win, you're going to be real disappointed if you don't. And I think you're missing out on the beauty of the process if you view it that way, where my saving grace was enjoying the process and going into it because I wanted to push myself and be outside of my comfort zone and meet all these friends and genuinely have fun with it. And I've seen so many state level girls go through that have that mentality and end up having so much fun. And those are the kind of girls that make the experience what it is. Whereas if you're going into it just laser focused, you don't care about anybody else, you're there to get the crown, most likely that energy is going to come across in a way you don't want it to, and you won't win.
Oh, people see right through it.
Right through it.
Yeah.
So it's figure out your why. Why are you competing in the first place? And it's okay to want to win. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's your sole focus, there can only be one winner.
Yeah. And how many people compete in state?
I think it depends on how big the contestant class is that year. I don't even know how many people are competing in Miss Arizona USA 2024 now. I think 30 or something. But I do know that at Miss USA, there's always 51. And then at Miss Universe, there's like 90 plus countries.
Wow.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's the year that I competed. I think we had 50 something.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a
That's crazy.
Good amount of girls.
Any advice for those that are competing in Miss USA this year?
Well, with everything going on within this USA organization, I would say make sure that you're taking care of your mental health just as much as your physical health. That competition, that level of competition is the second to highest that you can do in this sport. And I think it's really important to put your best foot forward, but to remember that it's a pageant and that you've got to take care of yourself beyond being a beauty queen. And obviously you did something right in your state pageant. Make sure that you are still you at the Miss USA pageant, because I didn't do that. And that's one of my only regrets, that I think if I went in with a better headspace and a better mind frame, and if my mental health was in a good place, I would have enjoyed it a whole lot more.
That's really good advice. You spoke about, or you have previously spoken about how after competing, you kind of went into a hole and were, a shell of a human that you used to be. How did you go from that to who you are now? And like what made you snap out of that?
One very specific thing. So I spent months throwing myself a little pity party. And my little sister was in high school at the time. And my sister is my best friend in the world. I love and respect the hell out of her. And she was there for me every step of the way during the actual competition. She saw the highs, the lows, everything. And she is a phenomenal writer. And she had a paper that she had to write in high school. And she got to choose whatever topic that she wanted to. And she chose a topic of labels. And she talked about how it like makes me emotional. Oh. She talked about how she'd seen me have all these labels and how she noticed that the only time that I saw my own value was when I had the label of Miss Arizona USA, and how I thought that that value was taken away because the title was taken away, but that her favorite label that I've ever had was just being her sister.
Why am I going to cry?
Right?
Oh my gosh.
And it was a long paper. It was like 5 pages.
Wow.
And I read this and kept thinking, like, she's so wise. She's so spot on. And she's my little sister. What example am I showing her by just rotting away? By not going after the things that I actually want? Because I let some title dictate my value and my worth. And I remember seeing this paper, bawling my eyes out, and it was like a light bulb went on. I'm like, what am I doing? I have to change. And the over thing that's changed about me is the way that I view myself. As like tears are flying is how I view myself. And I spent a long time chasing what I thought was just confidence, and I wanted to get back to that confident place. And I remember literally Googling how to become confident because I was like, I cannot show her this example any longer. And one of the articles popped up and it said to write down affirmations on a sticky note and put it on your mirror. And so I wrote down these affirmations and put it on. We shared a bathroom. It was like a Jack and Jill bathroom. And I put it on our mirror. And I made us both look at ourselves in the mirror and say these affirmations to each other over and over and over again. And over time, it actually started doing something. And then I started realizing she's listening when I vocalize the terrible thoughts that are going on in my head. When I say that out loud, she's watching that. What does that tell her indirectly about herself?
Totally.
And so I started talking to myself like I would have my little sister in the room. And if she would be okay with that, then I would think that. And it's when I started taking control of my thoughts and when I started realizing the power of my thoughts. And I did this whole self-love, self-esteem journey. And I've been dedicated to it now for 10 years because I want to be somebody that is a positive role model instead of somebody that has that victim mentality the whole time, and show that to somebody that I know admired me far before I ever won a shiny crown and has continued admiring me far after. So it was like that one moment changed everything for me.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I know.
I was like so invested in that story. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh,
true story.
Man. That's so crazy.
She's a wise, wise woman.
It just goes to show you how like the people that look up to you like really observe you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's maturity and wisdom beyond her. I mean, how old was she?
She's 3 years younger than me. So I would have been 21 as I was going through all this. So she was what, 20? Probably 17, 18. She was a senior in high school, so probably 17.
Wow.
Writing this senior paper.
Oh my gosh.
And now a lot of the work I do, even through the confidence course too, we've had a lot of moms come in. And there's a common theme of I want to instill confidence in my daughter. And I continuously tell them, like, talk to yourself as if your daughter heard your inner dialogue, are you proud of that? Because that was such a game changer for me. I woke up when I realized that somebody that's not even my child, like just somebody that I love more than anything is hearing me talk like this. Like that had to change. And I realized too, the best thing that my mom, my aunt, and my grandma, and then my sister and my cousin, I have 5 women in my life that are the most impactful, most important people in my life. I have not heard them speak negatively about themselves. I didn't grow up with a grandma, a mom, or an aunt that ever tore themselves apart in front of me.
Wow.
So I thought I was the only one struggling with confidence stuff because I had the most confident, beautiful, shining examples of women. And now that I'm an adult and actually know, like, no, they struggled just like everybody else did. They just chose not to show me that was actually really moving and powerful for me. And I think that that's an example that like people need to be mindful of, especially if you're around other young women because they're watching and they're listening.
It
starts with you.
Wow. Oh
Every
my
time.
gosh. Did you struggle with the decision to judge after hearing the news of the recent Miss USA pageant?
I did. I really did. And Britt is my director and has been the director for many, many years. And when she reached out and asked me to judge, I was so beyond humbled and excited. And she asked me far before any of the controversy came out with the current Miss USA. And it was such a full circle nostalgic moment for me because it's my 10-year crowning anniversary.
Wow.
Like, I don't know why that's such a big deal in my mind, but like 10 years is a monumental thing. And so I was honored for that. And title holders never come back as judges. And so it was a combination of both of those things, and also knowing that she asked me because I have this platform that I've built, and because I have More Than, and the podcast, and things that I've done over the last 10 years mattered. And that's why I was in that position. It was like, absolutely, I'll be there. I'm so excited to give back to an organization that gave so much to me. And then when I saw the statement from the reigning Miss USA that stepped away because she wasn't supported and really struggling with her mental health, it gutted me because my whole platform is surrounding empowering women, not silencing women, and taking care of your mental health. How can I possibly support an organization that didn't do that for just one girl? Think about all the other women that are going to be negatively impacted by that. And so I actually reached out. I have a handful of really good friends that are past Miss USAs and just asked them, like, what are your thoughts on this? I want to do it, but I don't ever want to be a part of something that is hurting women in any way.
Yeah.
And the advice that I got was, you can't make changes from the outside. Change comes from the inside. If you had a positive experience and if you're going into that state, then you can instill that in those contestants, those women competing. That's a way to make actual change. The stuff on a huge scale of the Miss USA organization, they got a mess that they got to deal with. And like things need to be moved around, like stuff needs to happen. But I called the director and just told her, I'm like, hey, I'm so honored to be a part of this, but we got to do something to make sure that we are investing in these women and making these women feel supported and seen beforehand. And we're actually putting together a workshop together that I can't see the contestants beforehand, but I created a full outline for her to give to the contestants to help them with their mental health throughout the weekend and beyond, so that they're feeling that continual support. And I'm also going to be working with the winner one-on-one leading up to Miss USA.
Wow.
So that she has support, because I don't know what the organization is going to give. I know what the state level is going to give because I experienced it. I know what I can give. And you better believe that if I hear that there's any other stuff going on in there, like, I will use my platform to speak out against it, because I won't align with an organization that is hurting women in any way. But again, you can't make changes from the outside. You can only do that from the inside and the people you actually get to interact with. So that's how I'm viewing going into the pageant, is what positive impact can I make here?
I literally got goosebumps when you said that you'll be working with her one-on-one. I think that that's like the most valuable, and that will change her life, hopefully forever.
Hopefully. And it's so much bigger than a pageant.
Yeah.
It's always been bigger than a pageant. And having her know that from the beginning is such a beautiful perspective, because you just get to capitalize and enjoy on the present moment of what you have right now, but knowing that your life doesn't end after the pageant, whether you win or you don't. Like, I think the toxic part of pageantry is that a lot of women get stuck in that cycle, that they feel like their value goes away with the crown, just like I felt. But then they don't pick themselves back up. then they settle into lives that don't really serve them. Or they hang around the pageant world forever because that's the only thing that gave them any of that fuel or any of that purpose. And I think there's a balance there that you can enjoy it, you can be grateful for it, you can capitalize on it, but you can also know when to leave it in its place.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I know I can pour into her. So why wouldn't I?
One last question.
Hit me.
Do you have any regrets from the last, I guess, 10 years since winning, or I should say, since beginning your journey with Miss Arizona and Miss USA?
It's twofold, because obviously if things didn't play out exactly the way that it played out, I might not be in the position that I'm in right now. I wish that I could have known my own value more going into Miss USA. That I just felt like I self-sabotaged so much because I didn't genuinely believe that I deserved to be in that position. And therefore I didn't show up as Jordan. And I wish that I could have just gone into that experience as me and enjoyed the process more and enjoyed the platform that I was given and was able to like soak it up instead of waiting for it to be over. That it's like, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I was so excited for it to be over just because I didn't want the spotlight on me because I didn't feel like I deserved it. Whereas now I look back and I'm like, how cool.
Yeah.
That's what an unbelievable chapter. Like, I just wish I could have been more present there. And I wish that I could have had my mindset now on my 20-year-old body, because I still probably wouldn't have won, but I think I would have had just a much better experience from it. But instead of like resenting the organization, which I did for a period of time there, I can now look at it like I chose to take a negative approach. Nobody forced me to do anything. It was my own doing. And now that I look back on it too, I look back in such a positive light because it taught me that at a really young age. And I think that's a beautiful blessing, that I lived a lot of lives, many different lives in my 20s. And now that I look back at that chapter, I'm like, you did what you could with what you had. And I'm proud of myself for that.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Look, we spent a lot of time together.
We spent a lot of time together. Great minds think alike.
And that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh my gosh. I just love your story. And it's just so inspiring and really empowering. I won't speak for all the girls in the world, but at least the girls that I know in our circle, I know everyone always just feels so empowered and inspired after talking with you. And like, your energy is so contagious. That's what I always say is, Jordan's energy is like tenfold what like it makes you feel. And so it's just, I'm very, very grateful to know you and to be working with you.
That's so sweet. Don't make me cry again. I already sobbed in this episode. I don't need to have two of them. But I appreciate that so much. And I feel like the way that I approach business and approach all of what we get to build together now is like, this is fun. Yeah. I love the process of it again. And in some ways it reminds me of like the business mind that I had even back in the day there, that it was like, let's just see what we can do. Like the potential is limitless. Who knows who's going to say yes, who's going to say no, what opportunity is going to lead to the next, and like being present and enjoying every step of the way. Because eventually we're going to look back at this season 5 of the podcast, look at this episode and be like, remember that? How much we've grown since then. Like, and I don't want to look back at this season and be like, I should have enjoyed that more.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
You're enjoying it.
I'm having the best time.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
It's been a good season.
Absolutely. Well, this was an amazing episode. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
I don't think so. I hope that I answered everybody's questions. And I feel like I never talk about my pageant stuff. And it's been kind of healing in a way to like go back and think about it and reflect on it and just remember that really started my whole career. Is just that one decision that I made to compete in a local pageant changed my life and showed me what's possible.
Totally.
And I think that's really cool. So if there's something that you want to do, no matter how big or small it is, like just put yourself out there and just try and ask yourself, what's the best that could happen?
Yes. Ask that versus what's the worst that can happen. Yeah.
And I think that's the perspective shift that I had during that time, that when I first went into it, it's like, I did ask, what's the worst that could happen? Like, I don't win. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
What's the best that could happen? Like, all these opportunities would open up for me. And that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. So now I just continuously ask myself that, and that little mindset shift is huge.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for letting me interview you.
This is so fun. Yeah. I know. I never do this. We should do this more often.
We should.
Next time, we are going to interview Priscilla on the podcast because, y'all, her story is crazy. Just a quick little synopsis. She was a professional ballerina. So you know all about good toxic.
Good old toxic competition.
Love it. We love some toxic competition. Yeah. Well, we'll do an episode with you real soon. Mm-hmm. But if you guys are not already, make sure you are following the More Than Podcast on both Apple and Spotify. Tell us on Instagram what your favorite part of this episode was. It'll probably be Priscilla DMing you back. And stay tuned for next week's Mindset Monday episode and then another amazing guest episode on Thursday. Love you guys. Woo. Bye.
Woohoo. That was so good.